It's a book which is meant to distinguish reality from illusion, and it discusses how the universe works, who we are. It's a kind of a roadmap for those who are travelers, and we're all travelers in this world, as I'll point out. So we have this title, which I find compelling in a way, that I should say the subtitle, especially that I gave the title, so I'm not going to praise the title at all. But the subtitle is what I'm after here. Discover the you that was never lost. There's a parable about this, about a poor man who had sunk to the lowest position in his life and was forlorn until he met a very powerful astrologer who told him that actually you're not poor. Your father, who passed away in a foreign land, has left you all of his wealth, and I even know where it's buried. And then he gave him instructions how to dig it up. And the narrator of that story asks the audience, how long does it take to change your attitude about life when you get the news that, well, you're not poor, you're rich? This is not a show about abundance or wealth. It's a show about ourselves and reclaiming ourselves. But the analogy is meant to indicate that what we are is more important than what we have, way more important. What we have right now is temporary, including this body. The body is, according to the Bhagavad Gita, an award given by nature. We can't sign up for it. We come into it, and there's some pretty high expectations for the human body because we have free will. And in the human body, we can express that free will more readily than in any other form. So, because of that, there's a lot of guidance. And the Bhagavad Gita is one of those sources of guidance for those who are embodied. So, this term embodiment, who's embodied? We are. The body is like a car, and we're like the passenger in the car. In some ways, we're being driven around by the force of nature. For instance, right now, if you try to stop breathing, you won't be able to because it's practically like being on a breathing machine. I mean, if you want to try it for a second, maybe you don't, but just I'm going to try it. No, I can't do it. We're compelled to breathe. The heart goes on. There's beating and so forth. So there is a sense in the Bhagavad Gita that this machine that we're in is being driven by a higher force. We are the consciousness within the body, but that even sounds amorphous. Taking it a step further, we have personhood. That is, it's not that we're just an epiphenomena that arises because of a combination of matter. What's actually happening is we're conscious beings. We're a unit of consciousness, which sounds a little pedantic. So we're people. We are people. We are a person. If you've ever perceived your personhood, then according to the Bhagavad Gita, that's real. Now, what's not real is what's called ahankara. Ahankara means a false sense of self. And what is that? Very simply put, it's a misidentification with our physical body, which includes the gross material body, which I'm touching right now, and our mental body. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, we have two bodies, the gross body and the subtle body. I could give a comparison that might help. If you have a smartphone, my condolences. Uh, and with the smartphone, there's hardware, obviously, and then there's some software, which I know little about. However, I do know that if I accidentally drop my smartphone off the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm not going to get it back, but I can get the information back because it's backed up. And Similarly, the software we carry with us, is the mental body. Psychologists like Freud and Jung talked about our shadow body, that we have memory banks or a um, internal body that in which is recorded our experiences. There are, for instance, traumas that are there from this lifetime. But the Bhagavad Gita claims we have what's called purva samskaras. That means we have stored memories, not just from this life, but for previous lives. So when the gross physical body, and here I'm kind of describing what's commonly known as reincarnation, which, if you think of the word itself, it's got the word karna in it, which means flesh. Reincarnation, you're changing the flesh all the time. But when we leave a gross material body, we take with us the software and the impressions, memories from previous lifetimes are still with us. Now, what's beyond that? That's what some people call, in some contexts, the soul, although that can be a trigger word because it sounds very religious. But what the Bhagavad Gita would say is this is the conscious living being. And if we want a more scientific understanding of this, which most do, there's higher and lower energies. The lower energy are the gross and subtle physical body, and I emphasize physical because it's part of the physical world. We, on the other hand, are part of the superior energy, which is, okay, here comes the more modern term, consciousness. And there's a lot of studies in consciousness nowadays. Many are pointing out that you cannot define consciousness or study it through physics because physics studies the physical world. And there, if you have the wrong tool and you go out and try to investigate the world, you're not going to know much about it. And there are different tools that one uses to explore consciousness. And Bhagavad Gita gives many of those tools. And that's what we're talking about today, because beyond the physical, gross, and subtle body, there's us, the actual person. The eye does not see, we see. The eye is a fleshy instrument, a miraculous one at that, that perceives light, it translates it through some nervous system, but we are the perceiver within the body. We interpret it when we see it, and we can also experience our own consciousness beyond the body. Obvious cases are people who have near-death experiences and see themselves below on the operating table and then come back into the body. There are liminal states many of us have been through. I mean, just in ordinary times, not near-death experiences, like waking up from a dream and realizing that you were traveling on another plane in the dream world, but you come back into your physical body and so forth. But through meditation, one can also isolate oneself from the mind and body by perceiving that I'm the perceiver. I'm observing my body, and therefore it's not I body, it's my body. I'm looking at it and I just happen to be occupying it right now. And there is a time when I won't occupy this body. If you consider that, it changes your perspective and the way you act with the world. I'm in the body now, but at some point, which could be at any time, then I'm not going to be in the body. I'll be in another body, according to the Bhagavad Gita. So, digging down deeper, not just accepting the ephemeral body that we're in now as the self. That's called, according to Bhagavad Gita, ahankar, false ego, false sense of self. It's a conjured idea of who we are. We're something beyond that. And yoga and the process of yoga, which is meant to, first of all, come to a platform above the bodily concept of life and understand that I am a conscious being within the body. And then there's another step, and that's where the true meaning of yoga comes in, means that I'm part of a greater whole. I'm part of a greater whole. So I'm an individual, but I'm part of a greater whole. And how can we understand that? According to analogy, there's the sun. The sun is one thing, but it's also different because there are different parts to the sun. There are the sun rays, and then there are within the sun rays, there are photons, particles of light. And then if you consider a sun ray coming into your room, you might say there's the sun, but it's not really the whole sun. It's part of the sun. And so this investigation into consciousness, identifying one's individuality, and then understanding that there's a source to myself. In other words, I'm part of a greater whole. And when we commune with that bigger whole, with the complete whole as a part, when we commune with the complete whole, then we're in a state of yoga. Yoga comes from the word in Sanskrit, yuj, which means to connect. And herein lies the source of completeness. When I forget my place as part of the complete whole, and I feel completely separate, then I have this illusory world. I have an illusory self. I am man, woman, cat, dog. If you ask a dolphin, who are you? And she says, I'm a dolphin. You say, you are not a dolphin. You're a spiritual being within a dolphin's body. That I'm giving the context of how one would speak according to the Bhagavad Gita. So that changes a lot of things and explains a lot of things too. When we think of being on a continuum, that we've come into this world suddenly. I was driving down from Northern California this morning very early, and I drove past the actual hospital I was born in 1956. And I was thinking, wow, yeah, it was just a few minutes ago. And when I was born, somebody assigned me a name and a house and said, here's your new house. Here are your new people you're going to be with, who are mostly gone now. And I'm moving on. I'm getting to the point where next stage, I'll drop this body somewhere. It'll merge back into the elements. And where am I going to be? Well, some people say you won't be anywhere because you're just chemicals. But the Bhagavad Gita doesn't subscribe to this point of view. And when you think about it, carefully, which we will, I'll go into a few slides in giving the logic of the Bhagavad Gita, you can appreciate the fact that you're the same person you were when you were a child, when you were an adolescent, when you're middle-aged. Well, I'm speaking for myself now, and then when you're counting past that. So there's a way in which you can be observant that the body's changing, but you're not changing. So how does this help? How does it help? Well, it doesn't help taking an ostrich philosophy, which is I'll just ignore the cognitive dissonance I feel when I identify with my body. It is helpful to discover our self and then connect to the Supreme Self, because then we're in resonance with our true nature, put in simple terms. And when we're in resonance with our real nature, well, you don't need a certificate for somebody to say, this is real. You know it's real. An example comes in one of the other wisdom literatures called the Srimad Bhagavatam, that says that when you eat food, you know that you're getting nourished, satisfied, and your hunger's going away. You know it. How do you know it? You don't need a you don't need to go on ChatGPT and say, how do I know when I'm nourished or satisfied or hungry? You just know. And in a similar way, when you're in resonance with yourself and with your higher self, which is the source of yourself, in a state of yoga connection, then you feel naturally connected. You don't have that sense of being frustrated with the incongruent situation in the material world, which is always changing, and we don't like that. You also have a sense of satisfaction that you can't get anywhere else. And when you're satisfied, you know you're satisfied. No one has to come and give you a certificate, say you've achieved something. You know it. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita says that when you reach that preliminary stage, just you're touching the very edge of it, you feel so satisfied that you say, I don't need anything else. That's the meaning of satisfaction. In one word, satisfaction could be defined with this one word, enough. I have enough. I don't need anything else. When I identify with my body, however, I always need something more because the body is constantly changing. It feels incomplete. My self-image, when I look in the mirror, is like, ah, why do I look like this? Why can't I look like something else? You buy some clothes, you put them on, then I thought they fit in the store. Now they don't look good on me. It's constant in the bodily conception of life. And what's to speak of, as I've mentioned a few times, perhaps now, cognitive dissonance. There's a sense that something's out of order. There's a fairy tale called The Princess and the Pea. And the princess, the true princess, was born into a kingly family and then somehow or other was estranged from her family. There was a mix-up. And when the royal family came to know of it, they wanted to reclaim their daughter, the princess. So they put out a royal edict that anyone could come to their home and because they were in search for the real princess. So thousands signed up for it. And there was a lineup because everyone thought, well, maybe they'll just claim me. And they had a device to determine who was the princess. Does anybody remember what it was? It's in the title, the P. So for sake of this story, it was a garbanzo bean or a chickpea that was dried up. If you've ever seen those round, if you step on one, you'll know it. It's like a little stone. So what they did is they put the pea on the floor, and then they put 7 mattresses on it and made the bed for the visiting candidates for princesshood. And they would give a royal feast and then invite the candidate. Here's your room, royal bedstead. Please go to sleep, enjoy yourself. And in the morning, they would interview, how did you rest last night? And all the candidates, one after another, would say, oh, the best sleep I ever had. Thank you very much for your hospitality. And they say, next. And finally, after hundreds and hundreds, they came to one. And the royal feast invited her to her room. Please have a nice rest tonight. And in the morning, the person said, I couldn't get any rest at all. And they said, why not? There was something hard underneath me. And they said, aha, here's the princess. The idea is her body was so delicate as a princess that she couldn't tolerate even the protrusion of one little pea underneath 7 mattresses. That's the idea. And in a similar way, no matter what kind of situation we arrange for ourselves in this world as conscious beings who are used to subtlety, aesthetic beauty that's beyond anything we can see in this world, because this world is a reflection of the spiritual world, we just can't get comfortable. You can never get comfortable in any body, no matter how much money you have, no matter how fit you feel, still there's a pea under those 7 mattresses, and you're going, it's not right. So this spiritual practice is something that brings us back to a real comfort when we know who we really are and we don't have to struggle with the false identity and keep up appearances, then we feel naturally enlivened in life and happy. Not the least of which is because we don't die. That's the sword of Damocles hanging over every living being. Little birds in my yard, cutest of little birds. I'll see a finch. He's hopping along and I go, Finchy, come over here, let's talk. And little Finchy looks at me and is like, no, no, you're going to kill me. Where did little Finchy get that idea? From many lifetimes of being in bodies and being killed. And I'm not saying he's always been a bird, but here we're always afraid looking over our shoulder. When's the sword going to fall on my head? And that's no way to live, says the Bhagavad Gita. Wake up and realize that you come from a different environment, completely different. It has nothing to do with this temporary material body. The material body also is given context in these ancient wisdom literatures. One of the analogies is that it's a boat. Think of it as a ship, and it's meant to take you somewhere. And what where will the ship take you? Across the ocean of illusion. It takes you to the other side where you can embrace reality. And reality is beautiful. It's nothing to fear. It's our home. So right now, we're not in our home. Otherwise, we'd be able to stay there. Home means a place you get to stay. We don't get to stay anywhere. We're all constantly moved on here in this world. So reclaiming oneself is not just a big deal, it's the biggest deal. Without that, doesn't matter what else we do, we're not going to feel satisfied. So Bhagavad Gita starts on that note, and it opens with a scene that is compelling. It's the great warrior, Arjuna, who's about to help protect a lot of people who are suffering because of a bad regime, something people can probably relate to. And there's a way in which the great warrior Arjuna, who's never shied away from a battle, suddenly loses his courage. And the mental suffering he's undergoing is epic. And his the driver of his chariot, these warriors would ride on these chariots and they'd shoot arrows and they'd fight with the enemy. And the chariot driver, who's his friend, turns out to be his teacher. And so the chariot, Arjuna, in complete despair, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, is sometimes labeled the yoga of despair. Imagine that. What kind of yoga do you do? The yoga of despair. I mean, there's hot yoga, there's hatha yoga, there's pet yoga, there's every kind of yoga now. What do you do? I'm in the yoga of despair. So Arjuna displayed the depths of despair, not knowing what to do and whom to turn to. And the cognitive dissonance dial was turned up to 10. That's high as it goes. And then he said, I need relief. I need relief. Please tell me, why am I suffering like this? Excuse me. And that's when he turns to his chariot driver and says, please tell me, why is this happening to me? And that's where his teacher Krishna starts to instruct him on the Bhagavad Gita. And that's where I'm going to start. The first slide after the introduction. It'll be nice to just hear some of the words of the Gita to get an idea, because I've been talking around it. But here you get some direct words. And this is in context when Arjuna is asking about this very scary situation. So this isn't the very first, but I picked out a few choice verses from the Gita opening, and this is one that is commonsensical and helps us to identify why there's this disparity between us and the world. So Krishna says, as the embodied conscious being continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, that being similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So let's come back into the room just for a second, and I'll go through a few parts of this. The concept of not being disturbed by the changes means that one has to have a context that we've been discussing, that I'm not my body, and may notice that your body's changing. Now, what's the implication of this? The implication is that the body's never the same. Even from 5 seconds ago, your body's not the same as it is now. And an example is given in the wisdom literature called Srimad Bhagavatam that says, you can't step in the same river twice. If I step in the Mississippi River, and then 2 minutes later, I step in it again, or 2 seconds later, I step in it again. It's not the same river. It's called one thing, but it's different because it's constantly changing. So we're a conscious being. We're in the body. And then we notice that I'm a child. And you can think back to the time you're a child. Then you can think back to other phases of your life. And you can notice that it's different. But it's different 5 seconds in 5 second intervals because it's a river. It's constantly moving, changing, morphing into something else. And the very fact that we can notice that means we're not changing. If we were changing, then we wouldn't notice the change. If we were the same as the body, we wouldn't notice the difference. And then in the verse, Krishna points out that this final change that we go through called death is not the end. It's just the beginning of another life. And a person who can come to that awareness and rest on that and be fixed in that conception by seeing I'm not my body's changing, it's going through changes, but I'm observing them. The final change of death, although highly inconvenient, I'm not disputing that at all. Even moving from one house to another is pretty close to death. The death experience, for me anyway. A person can be called in what's called in Sanskrit dhira, and dhira means undisturbed, undisturbed by that change. All the changes, what to speak of the final change that takes place, or including the final change that takes place when one moves from one body to another. And this is a preliminary step in reclaiming ourselves and understanding the changing body in contrast to us who are the steady within the body. What's the steady? It's the conscious entity who never changes, who's the witness of the changes. Now let's go, Jam, to one more slide. And this is part of the commentary on that verse. We see these various species, and it's not that each one of them, although they have different external bodies, there's still a conscious spark. I think in this rendering, you'll see, if you look carefully around the chest area, you'll see a little spark. That's meant to represent the spark of consciousness. That's what animates the body. And whether it was in the body of a bat or a ostrich I'm looking at there, or looks like a polar bear and a tiger, or a gorilla, or a human body, there's aquatics. All of them are animated by the same type of consciousness. And it's not that they're eternally individual souls. They're individual beings because they're a dolphin and so forth. They're just temporarily within that particular body by, which is another subject, by the laws of karma. And so I'll just read it. Every living entity is eternally an individual conscious being. So that's the reclaim of self by definition, that I realize that I'm not the body, whatever body I'm in now, but I'm an eternally individual conscious being. So that's important philosophically for many reasons, and they may come up a little later. Now, the next slide, just for some graphic relief. The body of an individual conscious being changes at every moment. So we're not changing, the body's changing. Just as the weather's changing, the body changes. We observe the weather changing. We know it comes and goes. We observe the body changing. We know that comes and goes. And then we have this next slide, which is childhood, youth, middle age, old age. everyone walks this path. Nowadays, people use AI to show before and after of people who are famous, beautiful, so forth, and then they show the progression that they're going through. I've seen a few of these, and it elicits a kind of a gasp from the viewers, like, how did that happen? How is it possible that that person who is idolized by everyone in a particular body is now looks different? And in fact, some people become angry. They say, "How dare you become different? I know you as the famous athlete, movie star. How, why do you look like this now?" In fact, I know I've read articles that some, especially women, get um, criticized for letting their hair go gray, and it's like, no, no, you can't do that. You're famous. You're a movie star. Don't let your hair go gray. It's like, why are you doing that? You're disturbing us. You're disturbing our sense of this false image of the body being the self. And so you find those who are um, aware of the fact that they're not their bodies. Doesn't mean that they become disheveled, but means they're not as focused on how the body looks. Because why would you? You're not your body. Body is meant, according to the Bhagavad Gita and other wisdom literatures, as a vessel. If the vessel is taking you where you want to go, who cares what it looks like? That's not the point. So if we miss the point, we miss ourselves, and we think, oh, I'm in childhood, now I'm in youth, middle age, old age, blah, blah, blah. It's the same old story and it's the same old illusion. And it's complete folly, not part folly, complete folly. We miss the point. In fact, I wrote a little piece called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. You know that old idiom, cliche, hey, you're barking up the wrong tree? Because I was walking through Washington Park near where I live in Burlingame one day, and I saw it was a terrier and it was chasing after squirrels in the autumn time. And the terrier was right behind a squirrel, but it zagged at the last minute and it ran up a tree that was next to the one that the terrier went to. The terrier was faked out. The squirrel faked him out. And the terrier thought he went up one tree, but he went up the other. So the terrier stood at the bottom of the wrong tree and he was barking his head off, as they say. And I stood there watching and I thought, oh, big mistake. And it's parallel with this idea of putting everything into the concept that I'm this material body, barking up the wrong tree. So the next slide points out that the consciousness, the individual being that we are, survives the demise of the body. Good news. I'm going to put up one of these for that. Ta-da! You don't have to die. Thank me later for showing you that slide. And then the next one, Bhagavad Gita 2:17, much to the point. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable living being. I'll read it again. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable, conscious, living being. Oh, let's check in for any responses. You got several ways to respond. You can make an emoji, and I'll try to interpret it. And by the way, I'll tell your fortune by the emoji you put up. Or you can put something in the chat, and I see there's already a couple in there. We'll read them in a second. Or, since this is a free Zoom room, you can raise your hand and just tell us what you think, or ask a question, or just speak up as you wish. What should we start with, JM? I didn't get any emojis yet.
No, we have to wait for the emojis.
Yeah. All right, let's read what's in the chat box.
Sure. So Nirali is asking a question. how to break our karmas or bonds slash relations before death reaches us. What about letting go emotions, that is guilt, attachment to family that goes with settled body? What happens to family after we die, and specifically if work is not done or untimely death?
So there's a process for this age which is especially helpful at cleaning the mind and bringing us to the full point of realization. It's a process of bhakti yoga. The primary form of that is a chanting mantra. So there are these mantras which are uh, from a different stratum. And when you employ them in your life by chanting them, you can chant them individually or in a group. It purifies the consciousness, and you come to this clear realization. You can see for yourself when when your mind is cleared that you're not your body. It's a it's a practice that's gone on for thousands of years, and it's in every culture, the repetition of divine sound. And so that's one of the main processes through purifying the consciousness. Anyone can practice it morning, afternoon, evening. Doesn't require any special certificate. You can do it anytime, any place. And if you do it every day, you'll start to notice changes in your own consciousness and awareness of your higher self. Next question.
Next one is a reflection or a thought. Shiva shares a comparable reference from Berkeley in 1972, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. About 2 years ago, during a lunch meeting, a former manager of mine suggested that I should read this book and re examine the way I live my life.
Yeah, I read that book. You read that book, it totally changes your perspective, doesn't it, Shiva? How did your perspective change when you read the book?
Yeah. So yes, essentially what he was, this is the revelation that he got after. He read the book a long time ago, and then he kind of rediscovered that book and started reading it. And he was doing like a kind of a few things, based on reading that book. So then, in that lunch meeting, he said, "Okay, Shiva, what have you been doing with your life all these years? Right? That he's living a great life now. What are you doing, to kind of live kind of a great life like he is doing, unencumbered, just kind of do like whatever you feel is good, you know. So it was coming from that viewpoint, you know.
He got some relief from reading the book.
Yeah, yeah. So because kind of meeting people online, kind of having a good time. He was doing courses in Foothill College and kind of revisiting all the math and the physics that he studied a long time ago. So it's basically kind of fully experiencing the life that he wanted. And then here is Siva, like why are you kind of still married and struggling with family life and kids? Like why can't you be the way like I am living my life now? So it's kind of giving me advice, uh, asking me to read this book. But I read some of the book and I got the gist of it. Which is basically human beings. I think they think that they have forever to live. So they just kind of keep on living the way they are
Mm.
without thinking that they could be gone the next minute or the next hour, accident or some other thing. So they just kind of forget that life is going to be done at any time. And then even knowing that, you will you just continue the way whatever you're doing, like uh, you know uh, doom scrolling on Facebook or wasting time on various things. Uh, so his point was, hey, I'm doing these constructive things to improve my life. Are you doing the same things? Again, you kind of take a look at this book and let's have a discussion with me and other former teammates Yeah, we're all kind of in different companies now. So, but we were in the same company about 17 years ago. So, but we meet for lunch, every year or every few years. I mean, the gap was longer because of the pandemic. But then, yeah, looked like he's been doing a lot of thinking, during pandemic years, and maybe he saw this book and got a revelation, and he wanted to kind of impart his view of the world to the three of at least to the two of us who were there at that time. That, hey, what have you been doing all your life when you could be doing much bigger things? And that's one of the points that I think the author makes in his book. Like, a human being can kind of go all out and achieve like whatever they want, put the maximum effort and achieve what they want. But then they kind of put the self break, okay, kind of, we don't need to go like all out, kind of, we have to, consider some constraints about the way we live, right? So like his point was, okay, if you're, because he's kind of a divorced guy, and like I think he did masters in UC Berkeley. So I think he has all the Berkeley know-how from the 70s. So he said, okay, if you guys, I think you're telling me that, okay, you're leading a happily married life with kids, but I don't think so. Like I'm divorced and, I'm like a completely free man, uh, no encumbrances. I got to meet all these various people online. I meet with some of them, like have fun. And then I do all this, studies in the revisiting all his school courses, college
So if I
courses.
understand correctly, he got a paradigm shift, to use that now
Yes,
cliche.
yes, yes. So he was excited about sharing that paradigm shift to
Yeah,
his former employees,
I
and
got it.
yeah. So
Thanks, Shiva. And I think that also the topic is practically taboo to bring it up about death. And that even the title is a little bit intimidating, the denial of death. I mean, one of his points in the book is that practically every human activity is focused on denying the idea or just stuffing it, that we have to leave at a certain point, and just being brave enough to admit, okay, there is a beginning and an end. It does tend to give one this renewed sense of purpose in life, which is one of the main points that I think he was making.
yeah,
And it's very it's palpable. In fact, in a writing I just made recently, I included some perspectives of a hospice nurse who talked about how when people come near the end, they have this uh, wave, retrospective, looking back, wishing they had done more, thinking that, and also giving it similar advice. You should take advantage while you have the opportunity. Thank you very much, Shiva. I really appreciate it.
We do have a comment on Facebook as well
Okay.
from Ritz. She says, I had a CT scan yesterday at Queen's Medical Center in Nottingham to check why my vocal cords impacted after a traumatic brain injury and were in tracheostomy. Hence, iodine was put in, and for me, it had to find out why I cannot sing a high melody for very long these days. I think she was just saying that the bodies change. I think that's the
Yep.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. Very relatable. Thank you for the comment. A couple more slides. From Bhagavad Gita, again, we have this relatable analogy, which continues to drive the point. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the conscious being within a body similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. And finally, a few verses from the Gita, that the They who dwell in a body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature, including yourself. So that's a new kind of perspective, a shift to seeing the difference between the body and the self. So this reclaim starts with this existential awareness that body and soul are different. Is it immediately effective? To some degree, because having knowledge and knowledge intervention gives us a sense of context, who we are, why things are changing, why I'm suffering, and so forth. But at the same time, it's not so easy just to use knowledge to come out of the situation, because we're quite literally hardwired into this situation right now. And achieving what is called realization, not just theoretical knowledge, but awareness of oneself beyond the body, takes a little practice. So that's where the practice of bhakti yoga comes in. And that is, there are several practices through which one can purify the consciousness and rise to a higher level of perception of oneself and the origin of oneself. And as I mentioned a moment ago, that begins with what is called shabda, or sound vibration. And one of the points of the teachers of bhakti yoga is that our consciousness is most affected by what we hear. And when we change the subject matter that we hear, then not only do we get knowledge, of course, like people deliberately go to universities and enroll in classes to hear specific things so they can gain knowledge. So in the practice of purifying one's consciousness, there's a way in which there are sound vibrations and teachings that help to give us not only perspective, but also the sound vibration itself brings us to this awareness of ourself, because it has the potency to do so. So there are what is called mantras. Man means mind, and tra means to uplift or to deliver. And we can be lifted above the illusory sense of self by mantra. This is the claim of the Bhakti Yoga teachers. So one can practice it by sitting and chanting the mantra, or walking and chanting the mantra and observing the world from a different perspective. And there's also ways in which to sing the mantra. For ages, people have gotten together and repeated the mantra through singing. I just got a message from Zoom saying, confirm your speaking language. Sounds like you might have switched to different language. Please update it so we can provide better quality transcription. I think I used too many Sanskrit words. All right, so now it's your turn. Let's hear a few reflections before we go. Anything that you heard, one point, and just give it in a minute so a few people can jump in. 60-second recall of any one point you heard that you can reflect back.
Please unmute or type in the chat box. Go ahead.
By Darby Davidasi, please go ahead.
Hi everyone. I've heard that we don't have to be scared about the death. But what I felt that I'm not really scared about my death. I'm scared about what will be with my family after I will die. And these thoughts doesn't give me to be relaxed about this. I know that everything controlled not by me, but I really care about, if it will happen tomorrow, for example, or after tomorrow, what my kids will do, how to organize, how to be prepared, so on, so on, so on. So that's.
In other words, what you're saying is, if you die, you're not worried about that, but you're worried about how your kids will go on.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know why this feelings is very, very strong in me. I understand that I cannot control anything, in this life, but
Yeah.
knowledge, feelings.
Well, as Imre Imruiz, I'm sorry if it's your name's truncated there, I'm not sure. Said it very relatable, and it is very relatable because it's practically even stronger attachment that we have for loved ones and worrying about how they go. And I can relate to it because anyway, it's very relatable. I'm not going to go into it now, but we'll leave it at that because it is relatable. And let's take a few more reflections. Manish gave one. He said, go ahead.
Manish says, what we are is more important than what we have.
Implication is if you know who you are, if you're able to see that you're indestructible, you're eternal, and so forth, then that's whatever things slip through your fingers or whatever you have now, they take on a different sense of meaning and relevance in your life. 3 more. Let's see if we can do it. It's like one of those drives for public radio. Try to get 3 more before we sign off. And it's just one thing you heard, anything in any of the slides that you could relate to. Jam, what did you relate to?
Oh, I was going to add something.
Oh, go ahead.
I
please.
remember the spark is separate from the body, and maybe I could have been a cockroach before.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And if you look at a cockroach, if you talk to a cockroach, you'll notice that they're conscious. It's quite amazing that they don't want to be killed either. If somebody turns on the lights, then they run away. And if somebody comes near them, they'll zigzag every which way to get out. And they're really smart too. So same living being inside a different body. Frank Kafka wrote a horror story about a person who woke up in an insect body. And I heard that when I was a kid, and it frightened me. So there is a kind of repulsion for thinking about, oh, I'm in this body or that body. But according to the Bhagavad Gita, that's the reality. And when you're in a particular body, you don't think it's abnormal. Metamorphosis, thank you. Shiv, you're a big reader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one more. I mean, 2 more. You got 3 minutes. A reflection.
In my case, I related to death being as like it's just a transition point, and it always helps to reprioritize. Like if you're under stress or you're trying to think what to do. For example, in Bhutan, I believe they think of death 5 times a day, which helps them to keep focusing on keep the main thing, and don't. If you die tomorrow, will this matter what you're worried about today?
Hmm. Who does that?
In Bhutan, I think that there's a practice
Bhutan.
in the kingdom of Bhutan. Yeah.
I've heard about that too, like in Naples Jam, because right, the volcano was right there, and so they don't know when the death is coming. So
Wow.
it gives a different perspective about the living.
Yeah, nice point. Only we're all in the same situation, which some are more aware than others. Well, as
Nirali
a,
just posted,
yes.
not fear of the death. We are not body, mind, or personality.
Yeah. Thanks,
Not fear the
Nirali.
death. Yeah.
Well, I hope this show wasn't too dark. It wasn't meant to be. And in some ways, talking about this existential reality that we're not our body and so forth is liberating, as Shiva pointed out, changing perspective and realizing who we are. The main point of this is, of course, not death. It's that we don't die and that our actual self, the real self, our real identity, is something that is beyond the body. And what's more, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that living entity within the body is amazing. What we are is amazing. And if we realize that when we're in contact with it through a spiritual practice or through just happenstance when we're in this world, many people who have had near-death experience and have seen that they're not their body, get a sense of complete relief.
There are a couple of more which have come. One is Radha Krupa saying, it's a big relief that I will never cease to exist. And Nirali following up, yes, we are eternal, is more positive sounding.
Good. We ended on a positive note. And a very encouraging note is the yogis who sit in caves in the Himalayas, who come out from time to time. Once in a while, they see one another, and they have this encouraging phrase to keep everyone on a spiritual level. It goes Hari Bol, means keep the transcendental vibration going. Maybe we can try it before we go. I'm going to do it. Hari Bol.
Haribol!
Bol.
Haribol!